Good afternoon. We are here today with Mr. Don Milner, one of my friends and former colleagues in the field of education. I'm really excited because our paths crossed when our children were in elementary school. I think it was either kindergarten or first grade. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
kindergarten.
Kindergarten. So along with
Yeah,
some other ladies and
yeah,
my best friend, my daughter's best friend, Trinity, out in Florida, we all were at Clopper Mill together. And then Don and I
right.
also continued a relationship at Roberto Clemente Middle
Yeah,
School
yeah,
as
we were.
a
Yep,
member of the leadership team,
yeah,
right?
yes.
So I'm excited to have an educator here to share as we continue to celebrate legacy leaders. I deem him a legacy leader based on his work ethic, based on his leadership, based on his commitment to education. For as long as I've known him, he's been dedicated to students and communities and parents. I understand recently here he's had an organization where he is trying to help outside of the school building as
That's
well.
right. That's right.
Hearing a little bit about that as well. And so thank you for taking time out of your day to day and being with us. And I love to just kind of hear, your background and experiences. Although I knew you as a friend, I wonder, what else has allowed Mr. Don Milner to emerge
Mhm.
as the person, the leader that you are today. So tell us a little about your background and experiences.
Well, thank you so much, Jeneen, for having me on your show today. For me, it really is about educating others and making a difference. When I started out in the educational setting as a student, school was not the most engaging to me. I really did not learn how to study and really engage with my education until I went to college. It was almost like this light turned on. And education found me. Once I found it, and once I became an educator myself, I wanted to do something about it. In our educational system, I believe that there is a lost curriculum. We teach science, we teach math, we teach how to read and write, history, but we don't teach kids how to learn. And so one of the things that I've been doing through my consultancy, Milner Educational Consulting, is I teach kids how to learn. As a father, as an educator, I believe that education is the passport to tomorrow. And if you have any doubts about that, you look at what's happening in our society today. As a history teacher, I am teaching students how to be participants in a democratic political system. That's really what I do. I think that, yes, and I think that, when people ask and I say, well, I'm a middle school teacher, that, provokes a certain amount of thought, or they feel like they understand. Oh, okay, well, he
Like, God
teaches
bless
middle
you.
school. Yeah, right.
Thank you
Like,
for your service.
but it's even deeper than that, because when these young people become young adults, once they're 18 and older, they can go out and they can vote. But if they aren't going out and they aren't voting, then guess what? Some of the things that we are seeing happening today on TV, that we're seeing in our society today, just continue on. And I think that this historian said it best. History it doesn't always repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And so the things that we are seeing today are not just out of the blue. It's not disconnected, and it's definitely connected to me as a leader. And so when I talk to the teachers that I support and that I serve, we had a meeting today. I said, hey, it's about making connections with kids and teaching them what their role is in our society. Because when that doesn't happen, these kinds of things that we're seeing in society just continue. The police brutality, electing the wrong leaders, not really understanding, who should I vote for? It's bigger than Republican, Democrat. If you're just voting for a candidate just because they're a Democrat, that's a problem. So you need to understand how to sift through all of the information, filter all the bad information, and choose wisely. And again, it all starts with education. And I get them in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I want to, make a difference in their lives. And so that, many of the students, when you and I taught together at Clemente, they're adults now. And so I have to wonder, how is it that, how are they processing all this? And do
That's
they
a
actually
really good
go out and
point.
vote? You know?
you think about those spirited ones, and then
Oh yeah.
wonder, what are they doing today?
What are they doing today? And many of which I am friends with on Facebook, you know, and I look at them and I see their postings and I say, you know, wow. And many of them doing wonderful, wonderful things. And, you know, I am humbled to know that I've just been a very small part of that, and hopefully a positive part of that. But that's where you talk about that leadership legacy. That's where, for me, that's why I do what I do. And I want kids to be successful, which is why I teach the study skill courses, which is why I want to teach kids to learn how to learn, because they need to be successful in middle school, to be successful in high school, to be successful in college, and to be successful citizens.
Absolutely. I think you raised some really good points about the legacy leadership and how important it is, as I always say, to first have those relationships and to really know your students and to know yourself, know what, you know, what your triggers are and what would prevent a relationship from solidifying with a child, right? We want to make sure we're able to connect, but sometimes we have to be aware of our own baggage or things that our instructional practices, if you want to use an appropriate term, that interfere with the way the students or the scholars receive the learning that we are trying to give them. And so I love how you are doing something a little extra now, Milner Consulting, to be able to dig deeper and teach them exactly how they should be thinking. That is awesome. So tell me about your academic journey, what school you went to, where your hometown, things like that.
Okay, well, you know, currently right now I am pursuing my doctorate at Drexel University.
Nice.
And and so I received my master's from University of New Haven, and I am a proud graduate of Washington Adventist University.
Nice.
You know, where there I was a history major at the time. I thought that I would be an attorney. My plan was to go to law school. And one of the things that I did that was very successful for me is I put myself around the people who were doing what I aspired to do. So I worked part-time in a law library in a law firm, and I found out very quickly that that wasn't for me. You know, I had aspirations of being a litigator, being a prosecutor. You know, that's good work for people who do those, but that wasn't right for me. And then one of my advisors asked me and said, hey, you know, would you like to teach a 7th and 8th grade geography class at one of the Adventist schools? I did that and I was hooked. It was just, like I said, education found me. It was an opportunity, and the way I see the world, I believe we all have a responsibility to put something in to make it a better place. And so that just kind of gave me that opportunity. And so I've been teaching in Montgomery County Public Schools. This is my 21st year. And my current responsibilities find me as the content specialist at Montgomery Village Middle School. So I've been there for 8 years, and it's been wonderful being able to shape the social studies department in that building and making sure that it's something that does connect with kids culturally. And it does connect in terms of building relationships with teachers and students. And I think, you know, having a conversation with the teacher today, you know, this is bigger than a black-white issue. This is a human issue. And we as educators don't have to have it all figured out. What's required is that you care. What's required is that you're treating your students and you care for your students. I care for Cherie and Autumn just as much as I care for the students that I serve, and vice versa, right? Absolutely. Are you really concerned about your students? That's all that's required. And then when you start to look at it through that lens, it just totally opens up a lot of doors what you thought were obstacles. They're now doors, they're opportunities, you know? I mean, yeah. So if you say you have that student, you have that student sitting in your class saying they don't want to do your work, or they're complaining about what they're doing. Well, when you're at home helping your own child and they're saying they don't get it or don't want to do it, do you just give up on them? No, you just keep finding other ways to engage them. And, you know, you have that attitude, failure is not an option.
Dr. Comar's phrase is no significant learning will occur without a significant relationship.
Right.
Goes along with they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right?
That's exactly right.
Oh, thank you so much for those wise words. I am excited to continue this interview and to continue talking about the greatness that, educators are doing around the country, because I want to say first, thank you to everyone who is a teacher. I am sure every parent has raised their appreciation for the work that teachers do every single day. I want to say thank you. This is Jeneen. You heard Mr. Milner talk a lot about caring. How appropriate. We are on Jeneen C.A.R.E.S, caring, achieving, restoring, empowering, and supporting our youth for the future. And so now we're going to go into a restorative component. Restorative practices teaches us that we need to build community, relationships, provide opportunities for relationships 80% of the time with students, with staff, with parents, so that when we have opportunities of conflicts, we don't experience conflict in our world, do we? Or in our community, right? So when we embrace conflict, even in our own families, there are conflicts occurring, right? And so when we have those conflicts, we need to make sure that we have those relationships so that we can still coexist and restore and repair and keep it moving. That's right. Short of what restorative practices is, with a little bit of Philly coming out of me, okay?
Right.
So, keeping it moving, the first question that I have on the restorative, I want you to think, when you hear the word restorative, I want you to think reflection. And so here is the reflecting time for you, Mr. Milner. So here's question number one.
Right.
What have you been thinking about the most? What's the most present thing of all the things that you're managing? What's been continuously emerging on your mind?
Well, for me is, and Jeneen, first I got to say too, we got to shout out all the principals. We got to the administrators.
Yes.
When you look at the research, when you look at schools that are really restorative and that are getting gains in test results and making a difference in the community, every one of them has a strong leader at the helm.
Absolutely.
And as a content specialist, the biggest battle that I face and that I sort of rack my brain every day figuring out how to deal with this, how do I support, how do I push and grow mediocrity? There are very few teachers that are excellent, that you would say, I want my child in that classroom. And then for the teachers who need that support in terms of restorative practices, in terms of cultural proficiency, those that are just underperforming, it's obvious the minute you walk into the classroom that learning really isn't taking place. So as an educator, on one hand, the big thing that I think about is how do I support mediocre teachers and push them towards greatness? It's not good enough just to be good, you need to be great. And so to make sure that every single teacher in my department is doing that, that's one thing. And then also as a father, having conversation with my Black sons about how to deal with the issues that are happening in our society today. I know on some hands people think, again, I have to go back, it is not disconnected. It is not disconnected. Are our kids being pushed in the classrooms? Are our males being pushed in the classrooms? Are African-American males? How are they treated when sometimes they push against the rules? How do we restore them back to a normal setting to learn and move on? Or are we excluding them? Are we looking to put them in an alt program?
Right.
Are we looking to give them a designation, their ADD, ADHD, SED? We're quick to put that label on them. And, I am sure you're well aware of, and perhaps some of your viewers, about that school to prison pipeline.
Absolutely.
And it starts in sixth grade. It starts in second grade, when our children are African-American males, they're accustomed to and used to being excluded. And some of them are future leaders. Some of them are future venture capitalists, lawyers, doctors. But they're not really being nurtured, they're not being mentored, there aren't enough restorative practices in place to help them get to where they need to be. So those are the two things as a father, as an educator, that I think about all the time. Because again, it's your kid, it's my kid that could be sitting in that classroom. And we all have, as our daughters are graduating, you think back to those teachers, right? And I've reached out to teachers who have been restored with Autumn, who has helped Autumn, and I'll do the same when my son graduates. But these are the things that I think about.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those. And I have
Mm-hmm.
to touch on a few of those points. Number one, we'll start with the restorative practices. And kind of the root of restorative practices comes from the school to prison research. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also working on my doctorate degree at George
Mm-hmm.
Washington University, looking at restorative practices and looking at the restorative justice movement that precedes the restorative practices work, and
Right.
need in different organizations and those populations who we're servicing are at-risk youth predominantly,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
even our community organizations using it to really serve those like juveniles who were already a victim of the juvenile justice system, and looking at how we can do something a little alternative than just excluding them, because we know that when we exclude them, we are teaching them inappropriate conflict resolution skills. You're
That's
saying
exactly right.
to me, when I make you upset, the only option
Mm-hmm.
I have is to tell you to get away from me. I don't have
Right.
an opportunity to explain how I felt. I don't have an opportunity to receive how you were feeling. And we don't have an opportunity to restore or mend our relationship. And so it is essential that we seek alternative methods to evaluate the appropriate consequence for our
Mm-hmm.
youth. And unfortunately, just as our academic data shows, our behavior or disciplinary data also mirrors the fact that we continue to have disproportionate numbers in
Mm-hmm.
students being excluded, students being suspended from our schools. And so we have to question, with the amount of highly qualified, highly intelligent minority youth, why
Mm-hmm.
then are we still getting such disproportionality in our numbers when we know that we are capable, right? And so we have to then in turn look at our implicit biases and our own practices to determine whether or not it really isn't just about the kids and our scholars. Maybe it is us, and maybe we need to change our practices. And so I appreciate hearing you reflect with your teams and talking about the levels of teaching. And we know that there are points in our teaching career that we all could be mediocre teachers for whatever the external and internal factors that might drive even the
Mm-hmm.
best teacher to fall in a mediocre level from time.
That's right.
That
Right.
is kind of related to what we call the social discipline window. And so I'll teach for just a moment. You have high control and high support. That is what we want to be. That's the restorative person. We want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that, we understand clearly what I expect from you. And then
Mm-hmm.
we want to make sure we put every layer in place, like Milner Consulting, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you reach that high expectation. We are never lowering our aims for any temporary benefit which might be gained, right? So what we are doing is ensuring that when we say, I want you to be here, we're going to help you be there. We're not saying, I want you to be here and then give you a point to be here. And so
Right.
the other boxes are not of as concern, but you have to understand that you are possibly going to be punitive in sometimes. That means
Mm-hmm.
high control, but no
Mm-hmm.
support. For example, if I were to be a principal, which I was for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
very successful years, I might add,
Right.
I would say that I would maybe be in a situation where the fire alarm went off and I didn't plan a fire drill, right? That has happened
Right.
before.
Right.
And so in that moment, I have already trained my building and my staff to be able to respond appropriately in that circumstance. And so I am not going to be a restorative leader during a fire drill that's unplanned. I'm going to trust the process, right? That
Mm-hmm.
everybody who has been trained will follow up the expectation that they will do, and they will carry on, and everyone will get out that building safely, right? That's an example of a
Mm-hmm.
punitive style leader. The opposite of that would be a permissive or a neglectful leader on the other side of the box. The permissive person would be very supportive, but not at all in control. The
Mm-hmm.
neglectful would be neither. not in control, not supportive. They kind of like just checked out. Maybe like a person at the end of the year that's retiring on the last day of school. You get it?
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about. So I thank you for bringing that conversation. I thank you for talking about the systems and processes that are in place in your school building, Montgomery Village, the last place I actually landed in Montgomery County before. Shout out to Dr. Malker, our principal.
Shout out to Dr.
No
Malker.
nonsense. What's your best Malker quote? Yes, we're talking about Montgomery Village. Give me a Malker.
What I would often hear from Dr. Malker, as well as Michelle Fortune, who was also an AP with you, he would often talk about helping folk reflect.
Yes.
And when you talked about all the pieces of the restorative practices, when we're dealing with a student who is sort of outside the lines in terms of your classroom expectations and norms,
right?
That to me is the biggest piece too, is helping them reflect. We go straight to, this is what you did wrong.
Right.
Here are your consequences. And then we bring them back and we welcome them back. But for some students, they don't really know and understand why they're being corrected in the first place.
Absolutely.
Because it might be a norm in their home. It might be a norm in the classroom down the hall from you. And so, going back with Dr. Malker, he would often talk about excellence, and he would talk about commitment, and he would talk about helping people reflect.
Absolutely.
Helping reflect students, helping teachers reflect who are dealing with our neediest students. And I think, to me, in my humble opinion, that's the piece that's missing. And I think, in a classroom, like on the front lines, when you're dealing with in a classroom situation, if I'm dealing with a student and I have 30 other students that I'm trying to manage, I don't have as much time to reflect. So that's why teachers will do what they do. They'll quickly triage it and then go back. But that's not really restorative. Right. So you've got to be able to have conversations with kids, help them understand what they're doing, why it was wrong, and maybe even strategies of what to do next time it comes up.
Absolutely.
Because after all, they're only 11, 12, and 13. Absolutely. They don't have all the skills yet. If they did, they would be adults. And look, on the real, there are adults that don't have it.
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. Separate the deed from the doer. Yes,
that's right.
You decided to tell me about myself, and it wasn't in the most appropriate way. However, it's not about me. I'm not going to take it personally because I know who I am and whose I am, right? So what I will say is I'm going to separate that act from who you are as a person and still love you the same way I would if you were like
separate. Hey, Jeneen, separate the who from the do.
I love it. I am definitely going to get Dr. Malker on soon. I did shout him out. Anytime I see like memories on my timeline, because I'm a picture taker. So anytime I see memories from different school environments, I always, shout people out. And so one of the times I did that, he responded and said, I will be available if you need me for an interview. So I'm gonna definitely pick him up on that offer. And so my next question, this is really good, and I'm sorry for all the follow-up questions. This is the next restorative question. You mentioned just a second ago that it's very important to ask effective questions, and effective questions lead to reflection, as you just mentioned.
That's right. That's right.
The next question, of all the things that you just mentioned, two things. What is the hardest thing for you? And by the way, audience, these are effective questions that I'm asking him. I'm asking him feeling questions to get him to reflect. So what's the hardest thing for you?
Well, again, I think the biggest charge that I have as a servant leader, as the content specialist of the social studies department, is helping people reflect and helping people grow and stepping out of their norms. One of the biggest things that I find rewarding in the job that I do each day is when I can build the capacity of others and they can take on the leadership responsibility and go somewhere else and lead. Okay. To me, that is like the biggest thrill, because to be an instructional leader, you don't necessarily have to have a title. You just have to be willing to take on the role and the responsibility. So how we go back and forth, and this in leadership. Can a leader be made? Can a leader be taught? Well, this is a false dichotomy. Leadership is a choice. And so for me is helping others reflect to make that leadership choice daily, because I can't do it on my own. Okay, so those are some of the biggest things that again, that's what I think about. That's what I go to bed at night thinking about. That's when I wake up in the morning and I meditate and I reflect and I do that self-reflection. How do I help others to be better? Because again, the stakes are high. Who we interact with daily are young people who have not made choices yet, right?
Yeah.
And I believe as they emerge into adulthood, we are essentially the sum of our choices. And so my job is to help them make good choices, reflect on their life decisions, and grow as students, and help teachers help their students do the same.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
This is just awesome. I love to hear the reflection term, because
Mm-hmm.
that is equivalent to the word that I would use for restorative. It's synonym
Mm-hmm.
for restorative,
Mm-hmm.
reflective. It's one and the same to me.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
hearing you say about the title. And it's not about the title. I posted earlier today about power versus position. And you think that because you are the leader of a institution or
Mm-hmm.
country that you have the
Mm-hmm.
power. It's really about the people and the other things that are going on with the people that brings the power. We learned that in our leadership lessons as well. You mentioned choice, and it brings me back to, one of our assistant principals, Mr. Richards, who used to tell us all the time, the choice is yours. The choice is yours. Yes.
Right.
Before he brought them into his office and had a restorative dialogue with them, you could either handle your business and get to class on time, or come see him in the office. The choice is yours. That's how we roll. Okay. So that was something that I had to remember. And so we, in order to promote that reflection at Montgomery Village Middle School, our team, Dr. Malker, Michelle Fortune, and I, push a lot of people to be reflective through our courageous conversations accompanied with appropriate documentation. And that's just how you have to do. I mean, you can talk about it, you can be about it, but sometimes you got to have action as well to kind of
Absolutely.
saying. And sometimes people don't hear you when you're talking, whether it's because of how you show up, or maybe they just miss an opportunity to really clearly reflect and listen. And so it's important for us to sometimes document and save our narratives as we give feedback, courageous,
absolutely,
in the nicest way. I think that I was one of
keeping a person's dignity intact, Jeneen, and I think
the nicest way.
Yep, and I think also too with that documentation on the behalf of teachers have to document. They have to document and show. The students are entitled to, again, being a social studies teacher, procedural due process. You can't just, from your anecdotal observations, say that, Devontae has a learning disability. It doesn't work that way. What have you done? And then when you start looking at the teacher and you're looking at the instructional practices, you have lack of planning, unengaging lessons. There are no restorative practices within the norms and routines and expectations in that classroom. But what they want to do is, like you say, export that problem, exclude that student, and deal with the problem. But I don't have to make any changes in terms of my practice and what I have to do.
Getting to the root of the problem. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not pointing a finger. When you're pointing one finger, how many
you got three?
You, right?
You got three coming back.
I love so many life lessons being a leader, a servant leader in Montgomery County, and a servant leader at all the schools that I work in, and working with restorative, with servant leaders who allowed me to also to be molded and shaped and learn from them, and being able to have opportunities to lead, even as they served as the principal and I was underneath them, still have an opportunity to lead and feel like, empowered to be able to lead. And that's what Jeneen C.A.R.E.S is also about. As a principal at Ballinger Creek Middle School, these past 3 years prior to transitioning to student services in central office, my tagline was lead, leadership, empathy, achievement, and determination. As I transitioned over to the nonprofit and other opportunities to continue my leadership, because I do miss the school building and being with children, because as an educator, that's where our passion is. We want to make sure that we serve students, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I will continue, despite the transition from a principalship to a central office, to serve the children, because that's where my gift lane is. And so I am gathering community leaders who are then pouring out their legacy leadership stories, strategies, like you and Milner Consulting, to be able to allow others to learn something if they are able to reflect on their practice.
That's right.
And help someone else. And so now we are learning. The LEAD now stands for learning, empowering, acting. Action plan is available. You can't just act without an action plan. And then dreaming big. Yes, you can. There is nothing that you cannot accomplish if you work hard enough to make it happen. Okay. So our next question. A lot going on. If you're on social media, you see so much in the world. If you have a big family, you may have been impacted by COVID. If you are a community builder or community, a part of a community organization, chances are you've had some kind of encounter that could have maybe pushed you over to a negative space. And so what are you doing to remain positive in spite of it all?
Well, I think that you have to always take a moment for self-reflection, self-meditation, mindfulness, and just to put it plainly, prayer. If you are a person and you're doing for everyone else but yourself, that is in and of itself a problem for me. You have to take some time, whether it's a walk, whether it's just having some downtime. And I think you mentioned it earlier, self-care. So part of what I do with Milner Educational Consulting, I believe that in addition to augmenting the school curriculum, which teaching students how to learn, I also like to work with parents to teach parents how to advocate for their child. With us being colleagues, friends, parents of children who were girlfriends, who were friends, how many times at every level, you and I both had to advocate for our kids.
Absolutely.
They didn't care that you were Jeneen Stewart, the assistant principal or principal. They didn't care if you were Jeneen Stewart, the middle school team leader. They didn't care about any of those things, and neither for me. And how many years that we have given to service of others, but we have to advocate. So I think that's the piece as well. Advocacy is also a piece, but the biggest thing is just taking that time to reflect and give yourself a chance. You know what they tell you when you fly that plane and when the gas masks come down the plane, what do they tell you?
First.
Put on your gas mask first. You got to put it on. You got to put it on first before you can help somebody else.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that over the past, I guess I would say past couple of months, I've been dealing with a lot in my family as well. I think the biggest change that took me from like a place of, this is too much, has been my prayer. So I connect with you. I think I started on Wednesday, 2 weeks ago, getting on a prayer call in the morning, 6 a.m. And just 2 weeks ago, I've been consistent and faithful to that prayer call, and it's changed my outlook on everything. It's changed any toxic interaction from turning from toxic to like, okay, what's next? What you got for me? So I think that prayer is definitely very, very important, and self-care. And I'm actually taking a professional learning class that I can't wait to share with our audience and anyone else who signs up for that training, that teaches us that self-care is a big deal. And all the myths accompany with how self-care can be deemed as selfish or self-pity or narcissism. None of those things are true. And in fact, as you said, it's essential for us to be able to continue and to move on. So I love that I hear you as a male specialist saying self-care, because sometimes people think, oh, that's a girly thing. No, it's not. It's for everybody. No. Everybody needs self-care. So if you're not doing that, please check on your check on the doers. Check on those people that are like you mentioned, always giving so much, because those are the people that we need to make sure that they're giving themselves the grace and the pace of self-care. I appreciate hearing you say about our parenting skills, because when it comes to me, my motto in any school building has always been family first. And so I don't think that there was a leave slip that I denied related to family or anything else, probably at all, because I believe in leave slips for self-care too. So yeah, at any rate, parents and being a parent is something that I appreciated watching at Parkland Middle School. I can't remember. There was a program called Identity maybe, or Linkages to Learning, I think it was, that allowed for those parents' education courses. And so that was definitely a priority. I thought you mentioned something about the parenting piece. Is that a part of building consulting as well, Milner Education? Are you doing a parent piece as well?
So when my students, when they take my classes, which by the way, this summer are all going to be online.
Okay.
For example, one of my courses is Study Skills 101. And what I do at the end of that course is I do a free parent session. Nice. And I talk to them about some of the recent changes and the trends in Montgomery County, also as well as Frederick County, because I do get students from all over, whether it's public or private. And I just talk to them about college awareness. I talk to them about what they can expect and what classes that are out there, programs that are out there for students to take advantage of. So for example, like you had mentioned when you were the assistant principal at Parkland, they have an aerospace technology program there. Some parents would not know about that opportunity if I did not share, or maybe they're not finding it on the school website. So that's the kind of advocacy that I do. And just to reinforce that they're doing a good job. I think the thing that you had mentioned earlier that resonated with me, Jeneen, is that how you're starting to make a change in your life is as you're connecting with other people for that support, right? I did the same thing. I'm a part of a men's Bible study group, and I connect with them. And these guys were a huge, huge part as I tried to deal with life issues. Not only has it made me a better person, it's made me a better educator, it's made me a better father. So I think that one of the things that parents need to understand is that they have to plug in to that advocacy group. It might be having that informal conversation at the community center or at the pool or on the sports team as you connect and you talk with other parents, but there could be other groups out there too, maybe more formal, where you can sit with like-minded professionals, like-minded parents, and find out what the resources are for your child.
Absolutely. You have a lot of things that I have to follow up on. First, I want to give a shout out to your class of 2020 graduate. There she is. I have my picture. We
there you go.
Congratulations, Autumn, class of 2020. Ooh, that's right.
There you go.
And then I want to say that parents, yes, the next question, the final question is going to be for parents and for students. But before I go there, you asked me about advocating for my child. And honestly, one of my children had a teacher email who needed a response from Mama Jeneen, not Miss Stewart or Miss Beck, whatever you want to call. So I had to re-communicate that, right now, we are currently going through some things, and he will get his assignments in, but until he does, be patient and give him a little bit of grace, and we will get it done, because sometimes you have to advocate for the care over content. You have to, as a parent, deem what's appropriate and what is not appropriate for your children, knowing the children the best. And so it has to be a collaboration between teacher and schools and parents. And so that's been always a priority, to make sure that I have opportunities with parents to say, here are my whys, here are my whats, come in and talk to me. Anytime I had a situation in the school community where parents were talking about, I made sure that I provided an outlet through Restorative Practices. So a circle, invited them in to ask me questions and chat with me about what they were feeling and thinking, just like I'm doing with you right now, and to give them an opportunity to collaborate with me and partner with me in the experience of being restorative. So I definitely believe that the advocacy is important for us parents to do, because we're also modeling then for our students what they will do in the future as adults, right?
That's exactly right.
I have a really good friend who talks a lot about letting the preteens or the adults, the young adults, become adults, and watching how they handle things before we give them the answer, right?
Absolutely.
You can relate to that one. So you also mentioned about community building, and I want to just recognize two organizations in Frederick. First, two people, I guess. C.A.R.E.S. Dorsey is a realtor in Frederick County who is doing a lot with building community. She's doing COVID community connection interviews. So please follow C.A.R.E.S. Dorsey as well on YouTube. And then we have a Facebook page called One Community Connected, where we are also shouting out people who are doing great things specifically in the Frederick community. And then there's also, I think, some kind of network. So there's lots of things on the Frederick side where we're trying to make sure that we build community with all people, you know, include everyone. And so I wanted to say that. So you've already given so many suggestions for everybody, I feel like, but is there anything else specifically that you want to say to parents? Is there anything else, kind of like parting final words that you want to say to students?
Well, first, I would just like to say to parents that middle school is not a waiting room for high school, right? It's not a time where we're just sitting them. They go through the middle school years and then they start high school, and high school really counts. So I think that college and career awareness starts in middle school. As our youngsters are coming to us, they're trying on different personas. They're trying to figure out who they are. This is a perfect time to expose them to as much as possible. And again, that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of information I like to share through Milner Educational Consulting. When a student takes my class, the parents take a part of the class too. So they are an important part of the process. Now, to the students, my message to you is it's never too late to learn how to learn. In fact, this is your number one priority right now as a student. In order for you to be successful, you have to kind of figure out some basic things about school and learning, such as time management, such as note-taking, test-taking, and those are the kinds of things that you can learn with me. I teach kids to learn how to learn, and so that's my message. You know, you do that, school becomes a lot easier. And then for my straight A students, because we have a lot of our honor roll, our National Junior Honor Society students, study skills is not remediation. So you take LeBron James, or, you know, I don't know if you watched that documentary on Michael Jordan, The Last Dance. Here's a guy who was the best basketball player in the world, and he had a relentless approach to practice and getting better and improvement. So you can always improve, even if you have a perfect score on the SAT and you have straight A's. You can always learn more effective ways to be a student and a learner. So yes, so that would be my message, and that's again why I do what I do, because school can be a place that can help equip you for a brighter tomorrow.
Awesome. Perfect segues to our closing. Thank you for watching today. Again, this is Jeneen of Jeneen Cares. Thank you, Mr. Milner, for your time. It's been a pleasure today and always over the years supporting each other. I'll let you know about Cherie's graduation party.
Yes.
Yes. If we're able to have something soon. And is there a website that you want to direct the audience to for the Milner Consultant?
Absolutely. You can find me, you can Google me. Just go to milneredconsulting.com. That's milneredconsulting.com. It's all one word. My last name is Milner, edconsulting.com, and then you can see more information. I also have parent podcasts that are available. And so there are 2 podcasts that have been published. The first one is about how to prepare for parent-teacher conferences. And then the second one is about summer enrichment, that you can never take a vacation from learning. So, you know, what are the opportunities that are there for you? So I appreciate it if you come by, check it out, shoot me an email. And again, I appreciate you, Jeneen, for being a wonderful friend, a wonderful educator. It's just been a joy working with you through all those years at the middle level.
Thank you so much for that. And I agree. I think we need to continue to keep in touch. As you see, we've been for almost 12 years or more, just through our children, just through our teaching. And so if I don't say anything else to our viewers, I want you to understand how important it is to connect with others, those that you're not seeing or hearing from, those that you are seeing. Just check on each other, because during this pandemic and this time, it's hard for everybody. It's hard for the strong. It's hard for those who are not able to be strong. It's hard for those who are with family. It's hard for those who are without family. So just check on somebody today. Send a kind note, a text message, pick up the phone and call somebody who you haven't heard from in a while, and definitely practice self-care. Again, thank you for joining. Please subscribe, like my channel, share the videos that you see there, that the ones that resonate with you most, share them with someone to help somebody else. Again, it's Jeneen C.A.R.E.S, caring, achieving, restoring, empowering, and supporting our youth for the future. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
All right.